All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the sixth season of the Pregame Cheat Sheet. I'm Darren Smith, along with my co-host, Mr. Steve Walls of the W. Steve, we are here once again. This is one of, I think the second time we've opened up the season for the NFL. Welcome back.
Of course, man. It's been, I guess, a few weeks since we've been here. Of course, preseason, but I mean, it's been a long time, if ever, that I've seen this many Chiefs fans here on time, early.
Well, one of the things that we talked about before we started the show, was they want to do the world's largest tailgate, and you got a chance to kind of like walk through there, and give me your first thoughts on that.
Sometimes even on Sundays, if the game, it's been a while since the game was at noon during the regular season, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times, 5 o'clock, game starts at 7, people are strolling through, they'll pull up right at 7, park their car or whatever, and then walk into the stadium, and they'll get here late. Today, there was no empty parking spaces. People already had their tents and everything set up. The grills were already smoking. Of course, you guys know we are the home of barbecue, so the grills were ready, man. And one thing that I like to point out is that the Chiefs did an awesome job by putting out the message, hey, we want you guys in your seats early because today is banner day.
Well, they did send us an email. Like, can you help us? We put it out there. Next thing you know, everybody liking and sharing, trying to sell tickets on my stuff. It's like, bro, no, this ain't, no, we don't do ticket stuff. So, first and foremost, of course, we want to welcome you all back this season. Kansas City Chiefs are hosting the Detroit Lions tonight. Kickoff for the 104th season of the NFL. Kickoff is at 7:20 on NBC, locally KSHB Channel 41. And also the Chiefs will be unveiling their championship banner. I'm not sure what the exact time is going to be. It'll probably be while we're doing this, but to be that as it may, if you're here, you'll get a chance to see the unveiling of it. But there are obviously some news that you all may or may not be aware of. There will be two star players for the Chiefs that won't be playing in tonight's game. One is Chris Jones, due to his contract holdout that, as he says, he would like a raise from the Chiefs, and the other is Travis Kelce, who was ruled out due to the hyperextended knee that he suffered 2 days ago in practice. Steve, what are your thoughts on those?
Man, I can say this. The last time that the Chiefs did play, and Patrick Mahomes did play without Travis Kelce, they put a mollywhopping on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, that was when he had COVID.
He did.
He was on the COVID list.
Yeah, so I think this is a game right here that because Tyreek Hill, they still had Tyreek Hill that time.
Yeah.
But this is a game that Patrick Mahomes has been waiting for. There's always those naysayers. Well,
I don't know
but
if they're really waiting for it, though.
No. There's always the naysayers that say, well, but there was no, of course, Tyreek Hill down to the Dolphins.
Right.
But you still have Travis Kelce.
So, you still had a weapon.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
It's like you're doing all this, but you still had this, arguably the number one tight end ever. Right. So I think in the back of Patrick Mahomes' head, it's like, hey, I don't want my homeboy out. But it's like, all right, I'll go out there and show you guys that I'm able to do this without Travis.
It's interesting you said that, and I was telling some people earlier in the day that I think that he's not only that, but he's up for the challenge. Piggybacking off of what you said, when people are saying what you can, he's only great because he's got A. He's only great because he's got A and B. He's only great because he's got A, B, and C, which would include now let's see, we take a couple of weapons away from you, how you're going to do. One thing that people kind of forget about that game against Pittsburgh, we talk about Patrick likes to run from time to time. He had no rushing attempts in that game.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, he had no rushing attempts. So he was literally just diamond. I think he said 4 touchdown passes in the game, but he had no rushing attempts, which was, when I read about it and went back and looked, I was like, damn, he didn't run the football at all. So that's, but I think in tonight's game, and as we lead into that, you see a Detroit team that is hot, or that is, well, I'm not sure how much it carries over, but they won 8 of their last 10 games ending the season. Of course, they knocked out the Green Bay Packers from playoff contention. That was actually the last game of the regular season last year. And look, they were a higher scoring team point-wise than Kansas City was. And so they shown they can put points on the board, and they have some new offensive weapons on this team.
You know what? It's funny that I want to go back to Patrick Mahomes real quick.
Sure.
People definitely underestimate him, and they forget how well he's done in these 5 years.
Yeah.
And in the first game of the season, home opener, or not even home opener, even if it's on the road, he's 5-0.
5-0.
Right? 18 touchdowns, and he also he has 18 touchdowns, and he also, one thing that people don't realize is he's 75%. And not only that, Andy Reid, after a bye week, he's had all offseason to prepare for this game right here. He's been able to dissect the Detroit Lions. He knows what they did well last year, what they didn't do well, and he knows all of their new players that they have.
The only flip side, and I'm going to ask you about it right now, is his preparation that he did for it. He also had Travis Kelce in the game preparation. How does his absence and Kelce's absence change things up for Andy Reid in tonight's game?
I think you have to look at the other tight ends. Also, you have 7 wide receivers on your roster.
Yeah.
I mean, so they did activate one of their tight ends for the practice squad, but I mean, you're going to have to look at those seven wide receivers that you have on your roster.
I told people that because somebody was asking me today when it comes to Patrick, and he mentioned it last year before the season started. If you're a fantasy person, I don't, outside of Kelce, he said, I can't guarantee who's going to get the ball because it could go anywhere. He said the same thing again. I think you might have asked him, someone asked him about this season. He had pretty much the same answer, and that's a good thing because, especially when you go into a game like tonight, you don't know where people were asking me today as a race of their bets and stuff. I'm like, I really don't know. I said if you look at how FanDuel, I'm just using it for example.
Yep.
They had MVS and they had Sky Moore. They didn't have the other receivers on there at all. They did have Pacheco and they did have McKinnon, but they was just a small yardages. But if you think about it, if Patrick is going to go for 250 yards or whatever, those passes got to go somewhere.
Of course.
And so as I tell people, I said he will easily probably pass the 8, 9, 10 receivers tonight, and you just don't know who's going to be the one to stand out.
I agree, and the thing about this game plan is Andy Reid, of course, he's a creature of habit, right? Like he has his first 15 plays scripted out. Now he has to change those. Whether he changes them or just changes the personnel, I think he's a mastermind when it comes to that.
I know Kelce wanted to play. If it was left up to him, he would play in tonight's game. But I think, according to Chiefs trainers, they were the one to make the final decision and said, you know what? Because people are asking me if he plays, I say, well, why would he play? Because if he plays, you use him as a decoy to defeat the person because he can get hurt as a decoy. Versus just if he's going to play, he's got to play all out, and that's the only way he knows how to play.
And trust me, the Lions, they had to plan for him. They didn't know if he was going to play or not. Of course, they heard hyperextension. They didn't know how serious, significant that he was, and I think the Chiefs kind of held that card tight to the vest, right? Like we're going to make you plan as if he is playing, knowing dang well that he wasn't going to play, and I feel like it's going to open up something for someone else. They always talk about before Bieniemy left. He always talks about next man up. Well, you mentioned it a little bit, but I asked Andy Reid about how do you game plan without a guy like Travis Kelce, and he said we just roll. That's what we do.
And again, as it relates to Chris Jones, this is what I was telling people a couple weeks ago. The Chiefs are of the mindset, assuming that just assume that he's injured. If he's injured, you still got to play the game.
Of course.
And so by him sitting out, Travis actually being injured, again, game's not, they're not going to postpone tonight's game. So you got to still, the next player has to step up. And as Bieniemy always said, they teach their backups to be starters, not just next minute, but to be starters. Yeah. And so, because we see oftentimes when backup players here leave to go to another team, they're usually starters. Byron Pringle, Demarcus Robinson. Yeah. And I'm not trying to throw shade, but I'm saying, but that's essentially how it is because, when the year that the Chiefs did win the Super Bowl, Tyreek Hill got hurt in the first game. Mm-hmm. What happened? The next game I think was DeMarcus Robinson or somebody in Oakland that that had a big game, and so that's just how it is.
And it's funny that you mentioned DeMarcus Robinson and Byron Pringle.
Yeah.
Those were the leading wide receivers when Travis Kelce was out the last time that he was out. Yeah. So, and now they're not even number ones on any roster around the league.
Another interesting thing, and we talk about next man up. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people in the Chiefs in the Kingdom are looking forward to see what a player like Justin Ross can do.
Of course.
Justin Ross obviously last year was signed by the Chiefs as a rookie free agent. He had a star-studded freshman season at Clemson where he helped lead them to a national championship. Had a spinal injury and then a foot injury last year with the Chiefs. So they put him on the practice squad. He didn't get a chance to play at all. Now he made the 53-man roster. Mm-hmm. A player like him, along with Richie James, who they acquired during the offseason, Rashid Rice, who they drafted in the second round. Kadarius Toney coming back now for a full season, even though he was injured and didn't play at all during the preseason. What are you expecting from those four players in tonight's game as well as this season.
Well, I don't know if we'll see the full Kadarius Toney. Of course, he's coming off of knee surgery,
Yeah.
and I didn't even expect him to play tonight. But they had to, I think they're going to throw him in, but I think he may be limited.
Yeah.
Justin Ross, he's coming in with something to prove, man. And the hype around Twitter and Chiefs Kingdom was, hey, this Justin Ross kid, is he going to be available? Will he make? Then it went to, will he make the team? And he was.
But the hype is real because you have players as great as Randy Moss talking about this is going to be the guy to watch.
Yeah, and funny you mentioned Randy Moss because they came up with the thing, you've just got Ross.
You just got Ross,
right?
Yeah.
So I think they're going to showcase Justin Ross. I really do. Look, this is a team where you kind of alluded to it earlier, where you're not going to know who's going to get the ball. It's going to be spread around. There's so many different wide receivers. And honestly, without Travis Kelce, there is no wide receiver one. Travis is a tight end, but I always list him as wide receiver one. And so will MVS, step up?
It's funny. That's exactly where I was going because I asked Patrick during training camp about his connection, how well since last season has this connection with MVS and along with Sky Moore is the season because, we saw firsthand there were games where either, most games, Patrick it seemed like he would just overthrow MVS. And MVS supposed to have a 4.3 speed, but it always seemed like Patrick just getting the ball out to him. But then the few times that he did get underneath it, he would drop the ball. And it really wasn't until late in the season, looking like the playoffs, and especially Cincinnati and then the Super Bowl, where it seemed like that connection finally came. And so, look, credit to Patrick. Patrick did say that, they've worked on the connection between he and the starting receiver. So I'm looking forward to see what happens with that.
And just as SH991 said, Sky Moore, and I think Sky he's coming off of an up and down season, right?
Yeah.
Of course, they put him in punt return, and he was trying to learn.
Won't be doing that no more,
of course, he was trying to learn that position as well as learn the wide receiver position as a rookie, and even dating back to McCole Hartman.
Yeah.
When I talked to McCole, I think it was back in 2021 when they weren't in the Super Bowl, and I said, McCole, your rookie season, why was it an up and down year? He said, because I was trying to learn punt return, I was trying to learn being a wide receiver and learn how to be a pro. And I think that's what Sky Moore was going through last year, and now he's had that success in the biggest game of his life with the Super Bowl.
What's interesting is that the Chiefs had a pattern lately is that some of the wide receivers that they drafted, they try to throw them back there because when they initially drafted Tyreek Hill, that was his specialty was punt returning.
Of course.
And so that's how, and he made the Pro Bowl and made all pro.
That was a big thing. It's like, I'm only a punt returner.
Yeah, but then in that offseason, he went and worked. I'm talking about he worked to become a number one wide receiver. And we saw what he did with Alex Smith that next year before Mahomes came on board.
But even his last year here, and I don't want to dive into too much of Tyreek Hill, but even his last year here, he was, it was a game where he learned how to do routes. He learned how to do routes. He wasn't just a deep ball, and he helped Patrick with that. They were running different types of short yardage situations, the check down routes and things like that. So, I mean, you're looking at this wide receiver group, and I think they're going to be a special group.
We're also now looking at the defense side of football. We get a chance to see the Chiefs and their first-round draft pick, Felix Uzoma.
Felix Anaduke Uzoma.
There you go. I'm calling my man FAU. Like we call MVS, he's FAU from here on out.
Yeah.
But getting a chance to see him play along with some of the other rookies, what are you expecting from them? What type of contributions are you expecting from them?
I'm not sure how much we'll see from Felix. Without their glorified leader, Chris Jones, and I know we'll talk about him at length. I don't think there's been that veteran presence that throughout training camp where we saw G.E.H.A and some of the other rookies last year, where Frank Clark pulled him to the side after practice during training camp and said, "Young fella, this is how we do it." They worked from hours on end, and even Steve Spagnuolo talked about that, how Frank put him under his wing, and showed them how to be not only pros but how to play the game.
We talked And and I've talked to some people on their respective shows, their podcasts, their spaces and stuff about what the Chiefs bring back. People, look, people think even in the absence of Chris Jones and now Travis Kelce, have to keep reminding them the Chiefs returned a lot of starters from last year's squad, both on offense and defense. A couple of new faces though, the Kansas City Chiefs fans may want to keep their eye on the season are the tackles. The right tackle, Jawan Taylor from Jacksonville, and of course the left tackle, Donovan Smith from Tampa Bay. Now these are players that the Chiefs acquired in the offseason, and as Patrick said, so far this preseason, he never once got touched. So the question for me, for you now, was interesting is that Patrick didn't play in the last preseason game against Cleveland, and I think it was Jawan Taylor who went up against Zadarius Smith and got put on his back. So so what are you expecting to see from this offensive line with the two new tackles?
We're gonna see. I mean, with the Lions have Aiden Hutchinson. When you think about a guy like that, what do you think about? He's
gonna put that pressure, and he moves from left to right.
He does, and so both guys are gonna get their opportunities. Now, we saw how the offensive line had to mesh together when they brought in Creed and they brought in Trey Smith and those guys. I think with those guys being veterans on those bookends, man, it's going to be really tough for someone to get to Patrick.
One of the things that I do like, and I got a chance to talk with Trey Smith this week, is the cohesiveness. One of those three interior players, but also bringing the outside tackles in. And he said, man, they give a lot of credit to Andy Heck, which deservedly so, because he's able to coach them up. And but I also feel like because those three players on the inside have played together next to each other for the last 3 years, game in and game out, that experience not only helps, but it makes them tighter. And then you bring the two guys on the outside, as new players.
And Joe Tony is in the mix.
And so for me, all that cohesiveness, and then of course the closeness that these players get while they're in training camp and in the preseason games, I think this is probably, and with all due respect to even Orlando Brown from last year, but I think this is going to be probably the best line that Patrick has had since he's been here.
It is, and even when Creed and Trey, I believe it was Trey that talked about we always have a competition. Who can set the tone first? Meaning, we're gonna come out and be rough.
Whoever. Like Trey.
Yeah, we're gonna say who can set the tone first, and I think that's a good problem to have. If you have your offensive line that are not soft, right? Because I've seen some offensive lines around the league that it's a gateway to the quarterback. So these guys are definitely hard-nosed football players, and it's gonna be tough.
This upcoming season, we get to see year 2 of a lot of these players, especially on the defense side of football. Leo Chanel, as you mentioned before, and I asked him, because I noticed during the preseason he got a lot more snaps than the other, and I asked him about it, and because of how Steve runs his defense, I think he runs like a 4-2-5 where he uses 2 linebackers. He said that he got a lot more playing time in case Willie or Nick go down, so he's got enough experience out there to contribute and stuff like that. So, but looking at that, but also the defensive backfield. I mean, you're talking about one. Who's my guy? Brian Cook is going to be replacing
Juan
Thornhill. Obviously, year 2 for Justin Reed, Trent McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed, and L'Jarius Sneed should be good to go into next game. Talk about the defensive backfield that we're going to be seeing this year.
These are guys. They got a
lot more experience too.
These are guys, and just being able to talk to Coach Steve Spagnuolo, during the Super Bowl week. I asked him, you were forced to play. He wasn't a coach that was known to play as young guys.
Juan was the first rookie to start for him.
Yeah, and last year he had to start a lot of young people. He had to start Trent. He had to start Brian Cook and Joshua Williams. Yeah, so now these guys aren't going to get the benefit of the doubt. What they had last year, like if they had a mistake, he's just a rookie. He shouldn't be out here anyway, So now it's like.
Now, year 2, you have no room for error.
Yeah, and I think these guys have developed a bond. They've developed, a lot of camaraderie in the offseason led by Justin Reed. Justin Reed's taking them, under his wing. And then they have another guy that they brought in, Mike Edwards, who was down in Tampa Bay. So you're going to have a lot of folks are like, all right, well, if there's no Chris Jones, that means the quarterback is going to have more time to allow these wide receivers to get open. And I feel like, Trick McDuffie, he was a guy that was injured at the beginning of the season last year, came on at the tail end of the year and gained a lot of experience. And I think experience is the number one thing, a key to making a young player good.
And because of that experience, that's why I expect him to, be able to overcome even in this game. I mean, Spags has a complicated system, but for these players that starred and played into George Karlaftis as well, that year, and this is a credit to the Chiefs and the organization, their coaching staff, and how they do it. They always make sure that the players that they draft to make the team, they mix them in with the veterans day one. Because we talked last year how Isaiah Pacheco, day one of training camp, was running with the first team. Yeah. And what happened by game 3? He was starting.
Of course, and you had guys like Joshua Williams coming from an HBCU, right? Like he wasn't supposed to be starting in the NFL. Like that just
wasn't supposed to be on a team in the NFL.
Of course, so that just doesn't happen. And where was he at? Super Bowl, playing in the Super Bowl, starting at the cornerback position. So the Chiefs and Brett Veach, they've been able to get these young guys and motivate them to play very well, and that just doesn't happen.
We do need to obviously talk about the elephant in the room, Chris Jones not being here. How important or how vital is his absence, and do you think that that's going to change anytime soon? I know he's supposed to be here at the stadium tonight, possibly in a suite, but since he's not going to be on the field, how, because of the contract negotiations and he wants to raise, as he mentioned. Yeah. So how do you think that's going to unfold?
Yeah, I heard about this suite thing a couple weeks ago, and the person who told me, I was like, nah, that ain't gonna happen. And they were like, yeah, he's going to be there in a suite. And I heard it again this couple of days ago, and I'm like, man, okay, well, I guess he's going to be in the suite. But it's our business, though. That's how I was looking at it until I heard he was going to show up and be in a suite. Now, you've got to – that's not a move that I would have made. If I'm his agent, I would have said, Chris, man, that's just something. First of all, you're going to upset fans. We know what happens when you upset Chiefs fans, i.e. Tyrann Mathieu. They never got over when he called them toxic. They never did, though he was.
But the difference is Chris is homegrown versus someone that came in.
Of course, but that's just not something that I would do. Now, I'm never going to talk about someone in their pockets and their contract situation, because at the end of the day, you have to remove, and fans don't understand this, but you have to remove feelings from it, because business is business. I wouldn't tell you how much you should get paid at your job.
Man, I try to tell them that each and every day. But also, here's the thing, Chris, to his credit. Not only, I'm not saying he was smart, but at least he's patient enough to wait this thing out, because yesterday's price is not today's price. Because the numbers that Mike Florio put out there, and everybody's trying to say he's trying to do too much. Then we end up hearing a report about Nick Bosa that's going to sign a contract, and there's Kurt Warner right there. Wanted to be the highest paid player, and then he signs. And now mind you, not only was it a monster deal, but it was a massive deal. Yeah. That was more than what anybody expected it to be.
$32.5 million.
And so no, 34.
$34 million.
And so now yesterday's price, where you could have got Chris for maybe $28 million. Now he's like, well, hold on, wait a second now. So, $34 million. Now instead of 28, I want 30, maybe 31. Maybe I want to be second. Yeah. Now I would have been happy to be second to Aaron Donald. Now I want to be second to Nick Bosa.
But here's the thing about that. You're going on, and that's what folks don't understand. He's 29 years old. They're like, oh, well, he has to, never mind him showing up today. Forget all that. You're looking at his deal. He's 29. He's going to be 30 before next season. Mm-hmm. He wants to get paid before he turns 30. There's not many players, especially not named Aaron Donald, that they're going to throw a boatload of money at on the defensive line, especially over $30 million a year. That just doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And if he goes out there, and let's just say he turns an ankle and he's out for the whole season, he's not going to get the money that he wants to get right now. So I think the best deal for him to do is sit, but not show up today. Like, I don't agree with that, because you got a guy, let's just say Travis Kelce was healthy.
Yeah.
Right? He's playing well under what he's worth. right? Because he was asked the question. He showed up for the Ronald McDonald deal yesterday, and was asked the question, what does this do, to your teammates? He said, well, it's business. What do you mean? It's just business. But at the end of the day, you got another guy that should be getting paid well above what you're asking for, right? So, and he was going to go out there and at least play.
But the only flip side with he and Patrick is when they signed their deals, those were the top of the market deals at the time when they signed them. I mean, again, yesterday's price is not today's price, and so it's always next man up. So,
but Travis could have did it too.
Well, no, he could have.
Who would you pay first, Travis or Chris?
Well, it depends on whose contract.
I mean, if they were both in the same situation, who would you want to pay first?
I would pay Kelsey first.
Okay,
yeah.
All right, that's all I want to know.
Yeah.
That's all I want to know.
But Kelsey did get paid first, so that's easy. We can't switch it up because it's not a matter of liking one over the other. It's just, I mean, look, man, this is business because look, we don't complain about the teams when they cut players, when they trade them. Before look, everybody talking about he needs to honor his contract. Well, the organization never honored their contracts.
Yeah. I mean,
because look at Frank Clark.
Yeah. But here's the thing about that. If you play well enough because Chris, they would have honored all of his contract. If he plays through this season, he was good.
And this is the crazy part too. Most of the players that have signed, even at free agents, the team has allowed them to play their contract where they've gotten the full. I think Sammy Watkins. I know. Well, he restructured, so but I know he got paid most of his salary. Tyrann Mathieu got paid the entire. I think he got paid $48 million or something when he signed it. So, 50. So it's like, there's no reason for you to be crying. You crying like you broke. I mean, you got paid your money. I mean, and a lot of other players as well. So, and Chris, if like you said, if he played this season out, he would have played out his 4-year, $80 million contract. So,
but showing up. So, I want to ask you this. You remember back when T.O. was won the new deal with Andy Reid, was doing the push-ups, sit-ups, helicopters flying over. Yeah. What's worse, that or showing up to the stadium and not getting a deal on the home opener?
T.O.
Yeah. Okay. Why?
Well, that's because you're making it about self. Chris, to his credit, is said, look, it's not about now. I guess
but this is still about self.
No. I was gonna say, unless you try to tie in with the social media aspect, but I'm saying, but T.O. was bringing the press, having the press come up to his house, and was really putting the spotlight on him to where it made it seem like he was separating himself from the team. Chris isn't trying to do that, and to his credit, no, what I'm saying to his credit is that the team, when you ask about them, they're all like they want him to get paid. They want him but because they know that they too could be in that situation.
But here's the thing, and going to my point was that it's all a distraction. Like Andy Reid, we talked about him being a creature of habit. He tries to eliminate every distraction that comes their way, and
that part's not his fault because the media, and of course we're in the media, but I'm saying like I get PO because it's like we already asked Andy about this 2 days ago. Why do you keep asking the same question when you know
here's the thing.
Andy
can't stop Chris. Well, I guess they could. They couldn't sell him. They wouldn't. They could have said we sold out of suites, right? But I think he bought that a few months ago, right? Like back when I heard about it.
Somebody get a man a ticket to a suite.
Well,
so it's not like.
Well, no, he bought a suite.
No. What I'm saying is, if they'd have said it, somebody would have given him a ticket for him to go.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and to my point was the fact that Andy Reid wants to eliminate all distractions. When going back to T.O., that was a distraction. This is a distraction. With him showing up today, I get it. Like, we want everybody to see the banner. Well, if he wanted to see the banner, he should have showed up. You know what I mean? In a uniform, right? He should have signed the deal that they offered him, or just played under his current deal.
I think the Chiefs are going to be wild. I think they're going to be in the locker room.
Well, and not only that, you're going to have every camera that's down there. When let's say there's a running play that scores,
it's going to be NBC.
Every camera that's down there, they're going to find whatever suite Chris is sitting in, and watching him dip.
Oh, they already know.
Watching him dip every nacho that he has, and every hot dog or whatever he's eating, and every time they score, they're going to pan right over to Chris. That's a huge distraction. A huge distraction.
It's a distraction if the Chiefs lose like 41-0 because they done ran the ball down their throat, But look, it can also work in his favor because remember, Emmitt Smith held out the first 2 games after they won the Super Bowl, and the Cowboys lost. What happened? Charles Haley busted up. Charles Haley and Michael Irvin busted up the locker room, and 2 days later, Emmitt Smith was signed to a 4-year, $13 million deal.
Well, And but
And
Chris,
hold on,
that's
hold
a
on.
bet on yourself deal.
And he led the team to a Super Bowl, won the league MVP and the Super Bowl MVP.
Well,
I can get it over to Chris, but Chris talking about being a defensive player of the year.
that's you're not going to get defensive player of the year not playing in the first game of the season. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, I know you got 16 more games, anything can happen.
Okay, but here's the thing about Chris, and I'll leave it at this. Like, if the Chiefs go out there and win, let's say they go out there and blow the doors off the Lions tonight.
Please do.
They go out there and blow the doors off the Lions. Chris Jones is going to be an afterthought because they're going to be looking at, oh, well, this defense played well. Let's just say they go out Jacksonville and they play great against Jacksonville.
Trevor Lawrence, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got some young guys who are hungry. You got Derek Nottie and Tershawn Wharton and Keandre Coburn.
I mean, George Kalafdis had 6.5 sacks last year.
Yeah, but you had Frank Clark and Chris Jones. So they're not game planning for George Karlaftis. They're planning for the Shark for Stone Cold.
Which is good because that means Karlaftis should be able to eat tonight.
But you got to look at that other side.
I know. Come on, trying to give myself hope for my for my bets tonight. Right. Before we get out of here, though, Steve, the special teams. Harrison Butker had issues last year, but because of Harrison Butker, not only did he get them to the AFC Championship game, his kick helped him win the Super Bowl. What do you look at, when you see Butker and the return of Tommy Townsend as well?
Yeah, there was an up and down season. There was, Butker missing a few kicks. Yeah. There were problems with the hold, things like that. But he came through. So I think he was riding high, going into the offseason, like you said, from the Super Bowl. So it's the Chiefs didn't bring in another kicker to have a competition or anything like that. So I think, it's Butker. Butker is people know he's good from 50 and out, 50 yards now. The extra points, that's where he's not good from. So I think he's worked in this offseason. And I don't foresee there being a problem.
As we did last year, let's look at who's your X factor for tonight's game?
Ooh. My X factor is going to be the defensive line.
Okay.
I mean, Chris Jones. How will y'all step up? We talked about it earlier in the show. Next man up. How are they going to show that they don't? And I say this, and I'm going to throw this up there and duck. How do they show that they don't need Chris Jones? How do they show that they can go?
That's perfect.
How do they show that they can go and win a ball game and show that, hey, we don't need them, we good. Next man up. We gonna roll, like Andy Reid said. So I think that's my X factor as a defensive line.
I'm gonna do you one better.
What's that?
My X factor, Andy Reid, Matt Nagy. Because as you mentioned, defensive line without Chris Jones. Let's see what you draw up without Travis Kelce.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, as we talked about early on, Patrick being able to dive the football out and spread the ball around. Let's see what type of play calling you got. And then if by chance you fall behind, what are you calling? What are you playing? What kind of personnel are you putting in place? See, for me, I like the coaching aspect because I'm trying to see what type of chess you're playing.
Of course.
And so for me, that's going to be the X factor. That's going to be key. And then also, I want to see how Nagy calls the plays because this is the first time since Patrick since he's been starting. First time he's had somebody outside of Eric Bieniemy being that last voice in his ear.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I mean, you definitely gonna have to show. You've only had a couple of days to game plan this. Yeah. And Andy, let's see you get in your bag.
So we got two good X factors. I like that. Your prediction for tonight's game?
I said it just a few minutes ago in another show that we did prior to this one. I have the Chiefs winning 30. What did I say? 37-34. 37-34, and we talked about Harrison Butker. I got Harrison Butker winning the game.
I got Chiefs winning 30-31. A lot of it's selfish, of course, but
okay.
I've got them covering the 6.5 that I put the money down on. But I do think it's going to be a shootout. I think I would be surprised if it's not a high-scoring game. I think for me that'll be the craziest part because
either way, 65 points?
Yeah,
I got 65.
Yeah, so that's a lot of points, and so I would be shocked if it ended up being a defensive type game. You'd be like, man, really, without Chris Jones, and So for me, I like to see that, and then I know we'll talk about it more, and I know we'll just say it, but just give it a sneak preview of our predictions that we're going to do Monday, at our new spot. I'll let you announce that in just a second. But you know, if for some reason this injury lingers on with Kelsey and we don't know how long Chris Jones sits out, how do you feel like this will affect them throughout the season and perhaps in postseason if they're able to get to it?
For Kelsey,
for Kelsey and Chris Jones by not being here.
I think to eliminate the distraction of Chris Jones, just win. That's all it amounts to being.
And he does have to report by week 8 for him to get credit for this year. So he will be back.
Just win. He's going to be feeling a type of way if they go out there and still are able to wreck shop. He's definitely going to be scratching his head like, what did I do this for? So on that end, the defensive side, without Chris Jones, I think they just need to win. For Kelsey, he's 33 years old, man. It's a different type of injury compared to when you're 25, right? He did, have ACL surgery back in 2013, his rookie year. And I don't know, it wasn't reported or anything like that, or what leg was injured for the hyperextension in practice the other day. So I think they said that he doesn't have any pain. He was able to walk. He was able to run. So that's it's still scary because if you don't have any pain, what really took place. Like, I
think you kind of allow him to be light all week in practice before the Jacksonville game.
Yeah. So and as what's happening now, the choir from the Boys and Girls, the 43rd Street Boys and Girls Club are singing. Lift every voice. So
I'd like to know where they're at.
Of course. Well, yeah, you can catch us on Monday night at a new location, Chicken and Pickle. Make sure you guys come down, hang out with us. We'll be right there on Burlington, 16th and Burlington, North Kansas City, to come out for the Red Hour, 6:30 to 7:30. Myself, Darren Smith, Uncle Sean Tyler, and also DJ Q. We're bringing the heat as the best Monday night sports show, man, that you guys want to see in Chiefs Kingdom.
And then also, look, follow Steve and I on social media at Steve Walls KC. At Darren Smith WHB. Following the game, of course, on our respective platforms, we'll be bringing you the Chiefs press conferences with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and whoever else stands out in the game. Then, of course, Steve and I will bring you a post-game show from the field after the game, wrapping up the season opener and talking about tonight's game as we preview next week's game against Jacksonville. In Jacksonville, of course. And thank you so much for following us over the last 5 years that we've been doing this. Steve Smith, Steve Walls, and myself, we will be, again, just like we've done before, we'll be at every game from here through the Super Bowl. So we'll even be out in Germany where it's going to be late in the afternoon, but early in the morning for you all when the Chiefs play. So follow us throughout the season. We'll bring you the best, and we are the only people that bring you live pregame coverage from every location, whether it's home or on the road, talking Chiefs football.
Of course, definitely appreciate you guys.
So for Steve Walls, I'm Darren Smith. Thank you so very much for the pregame cheat sheet. Get ready for kickoff in about 18 minutes on NBC. We will see you post-game.
Football fans, you can't spell gate without Gates, and great tailgates start with Gates sauces and seasonings. Named synonymous with mouth-watering tailgates. When you make your list of tailgate essentials, add Gates sauces and seasonings to that list. Spice up your tailgate experience with that unmistakable great taste. Available in 4 tantalizing flavors. Classic, sweet and mild, mild and hot. Find it at your local grocer, and if you don't see it, ask for it. Visit GatesBarbecue.com to purchase any of the great sauces and seasonings. Great tailgates start with Gates.